Up next on U.S. Bank Business Watch, presented by the Cincinnati Business Courier, meet the new guy running the Kroger Corporation. He's known for a lot of things, including being a regular guy. It's the Cincinnati gem that's often overlooked. We'll take you inside Memorial Hall and a new device that's giving patients like this young woman new hope to walk again. U.S. Bank Business Watch is next. Good morning. Welcome to U.S. Bank Business Watch. I'm Brian Patrick. It's good to have you with us. On the Business Courier front page centerpiece this week, a profile of an average guy who's making his mark, an average humble guy who happens to be right now at the helm of one of America's largest corporations and Cincinnati's largest employer. He oversees $100 billion in revenue, just completed a $2.5 billion acquisition for his company. His low-key style may be average, but there's nothing average about new Kroger CEO Rodney McMullen, who is making his mark. He got his start at Kroger in 1978. He was stocking shelves as a University of Kentucky undergrad. A steady move up the ladder resulted in his appointment in 2009 as president and COO before assuming the CEO role January 1st. He replaced David Dillon, who has retired. The 53-year-old McMullen is said to know the grocery business inside and out, and some say he knows the grocery business better than anyone. McMullen takes over the grocery giant at a crucial moment. Kroger just added 227 stores with last week's acquisition of Harris Teeter supermarkets. He is also tasked with keeping Kroger's industry-leading streak of 40 straight quarters of same-store sales growth alive, and investors want him to build on Kroger's fantastic 2013 stock run in which shares rose 52%. True to his humble reputation, McMullen chose not to talk to us for the story, but our reporter Steve Watkins talked to many people, including Dave Dillon, about McMullen and the expectations of him as he begins his new role. Steve joins our Business Courier editor Rob Dahlmeyer here in the studio with more on what they had to say. Steve and Rob?
Thanks very much, Steve. Thanks for being here. So as I said, McMullen didn't talk to us for the story. It's not a rare thing. Their CEOs, since we've been around, just don't do it very often. But what did you find out about Rodney McMullen when you talked to other people?
Well, a lot of things. He's involved in a lot of local boards. Father Graham from Xavier University, Rodney sits on the board of trustees there. Father Graham talked about how smart he is, yet how willing he is to listen to others. I talked to Bill Ball, who sits on the board at Cincinnati Financial with Rodney McMullen, and he said Rodney rarely says the first thing about an issue. He always listens, but when he does speak, everybody listens to what he has to say. He's very smart, and one thing that came across, people say he knows more about the grocery business than anyone in the country. That's pretty impressive.
I mean, he got his start at Kroger when?
He started quite a while ago, several decades ago, and he's worked his way up through. He started in college as a stock boy at University of Kentucky. Right. So his whole career has been at Kroger, and he's worked with David Dillon, the previous CEO, for years.
And talking about Dillon, who by almost all accounts has had a fantastic run. He steps aside, so January 1st, McMullen took over. How is McMullen going to be different from Dillon, according to the people you talked to?
Well, there are a few things. One thing is David Dillon was really comfortable talking to people, both at annual meetings, at speeches, and to the employees, and both in a big group and when people came up to him after. I personally saw that a number of times. Rodney McMullen, it's not that he would be uncomfortable. In fact, some of the people I spoke to said that, but it's something he'll have to get used to because it is a slightly different role.
Now, Kroger's been on a run, a long run, and considered widely to be the best run grocery chain in the country. Years ago, Walmart was supposed to kill him. Didn't happen. But what are some challenges that they face anyway? This is a tough industry. This is an industry where 2% margins aren't uncommon.
It's a real tough industry. He has several challenges. Kroger's been on a great roll, which is great for him to walk into, yet the Harris Teeter deal they just completed, that's huge, and there are a lot of efficiencies, cost savings, and improvements to both stores that he's going to need to get out of that. Fortunately, he knows the grocery business so well. Other things, the stock price has been up a lot, and that's tough to keep going. And there are a few other things internally and with new products and things like that that they're going to have to keep those margins up.
Well, I'm sure I know you'll be watching. I know you'll be writing about it, so thanks for being here.
Sure, thank you.
Back to you.
All right, Rob and Steve, thank you so much. Great story about a fascinating, smart, regular guy in an exciting new role. Be sure to read that story in our print edition of the Cincinnati Business Courier. Music Hall's often overlooked neighbor is getting a makeover. Cincinnati Center City Development Corporation, 3CDC, and supporters of Memorial Hall are working together to make some major renovations to this historic building, which is owned by the county, but it's leased to Memorial Hall Society Board.
Changes that we've made at Memorial Hall so far include a new marketing program, expanded catering facilities, and also audiovisual and sound equipment in the stage.
$6 million grant from the Ohio Capital Fund will be used to get started on these changes. Memorial Hall opened in 1908. It was designed by Cincinnati's Samuel Hannaford and Sons as a monument to area veterans of the Spanish-American War and the Civil War here in the U.S. A makeover is in the works for another Samuel Hannaford building. A group of national and local developers have purchased the historic U.S. playing card property in Norwood, located along I-71 near the Norwood Lateral. The plan is to turn 470,000 square feet of industrial space into Class A office space. It should cost between $45 and $60 million. We're told the developers are talking to a couple of potential tenants, and they're working to secure state and federal historic tax credits to help fund the rehab. The neo-Romanesque Hannaford-designed building was built between 1900 and 1922. Ground has now been broken on the controversial relocation of a home for struggling women. City leaders joined with Cincinnati Union Bethel workers breaking ground for the future site of the new Anna Louise Inn. This new facility will be on Reading Road in Mount Auburn, including 85 efficiency apartments, as well as room for a program called Off the Streets. The celebration comes after a 2-year controversy that pitted Western and Southern against the owners of the inn, which had been located in Lytle Park for more than a century. Last spring, the owners finally agreed to sell, and Western and Southern plans to turn that property into condos. CTI Clinical Trial and Consulting Services of Blue Ash completed a multi-million-dollar acquisition of Community Research, which has 3 centers in Greater Cincinnati. The group tests new drugs and medical devices in an effort to win approval from government regulators. All of the more than 50 workers at Community Research are expected to be retained as employees of CTI, a privately held company which has nearly 300 other employees around the world. Hamilton County will accept and renovate the 500,000 square foot building that once housed the former Mercy Franciscan Hospital in Mount Airy. They plan to turn it into a new crime lab. County Commission President Chris Monzel announced the unanimous acceptance at last week's commission meeting. Hamilton County Coroner Dr. Lakshmi Samarto shook hands with Sheriff Jim Neal as the deal was made. They've been pushing for the new lab that a study says has been needed for 2 years. The estimated cost was $56 million. It will cost $21 million to renovate the old Mercy Hospital.
I'm speechless. Unusual for me, I think. I'm really happy that the commissioners made the right decision.
The lab analyzes thousands of pieces of evidence every year, but it's so cramped scientists can't work on more than one case at a time for fear of contamination. The commissioners accepted the site without settlement of another issue, whether the County Board of Elections will also move there. The board is deadlocked on that issue. The Drake Center Health Facility is one of 22 sites across America that is testing the EXO, a device that has helped people use their own muscles to walk again. The EXO looks like a pair of spindly robot legs attached to a body harness. The Drake Center got its EXO in 2012, but late last fall it became one of only 4 facilities to be upgraded with a variable assist version. It is making a major difference for patients.
It really gives patients, first of all, that option of being upright, eye level with individuals, and just gives them that sense of accomplishment.
It's gonna sound kind of bad, but I see bellies and butts all the time. And being up on the EXO, I can, see people face to face. And when we did the conference thing with everybody here, it was fun to see the top of people's heads instead of, you know, being either eye to eye or butts and bellies.
Well, what a great spirit she has. Carolina is her name. She was in a car accident in 2009. When she was just 19 years old, that left Carolina paralyzed from the waist down. Now, she wasn't completely without movement and could walk for about 10 minutes before getting exhausted, but now, using the exoskeleton, she can use her own muscles to walk again. Well, we often write about CEOs in the Business Courier, but this week's CEO wears a Roman collar instead of a tie. The Reverend Timothy Howe may seem very different from the usual CEO, but the president of St. Xavier High School faces many of the same challenges as leaders of the region's largest businesses. This is the second time Father Howe has been called to serve at Cincinnati's largest private school. He was previously a Spanish teacher at the all-male Jesuit school. He's also very proud of the impact St. X graduates make on our community.
Many of our graduates are successful in business, and many of our graduates are successful in the nonprofit world as well. So what we ask our students to do is to take the talents that God has given them and to multiply them, to develop them, and then to put them at the service of our community.
While St. Xavier has a reputation as being a school only for wealthy students, Father Howe noted that 1/3 of its students receive tuition assistance. Up next this morning on U.S. Bank Business Watch, Tri-Health is moving some offices to a new home near Xavier University. And the days are numbered for this building that once housed a department store. Here's some news you may have missed if you're not reading the Business Courier online every day or following us on Facebook and Twitter. A Florida-based energy firm revealed plans last week to build a $500 million natural gas-fired power plant in Middletown. The project, called the Middletown Energy Center, would create 300 to 400 construction jobs that eventually employ a full-time staff of 25 to 30. The plant would reportedly generate enough power to supply about 400,000 homes in the region. The company says it has begun applying for permits and is targeting a 2018 operations date. Tri-Health is the first office tenant to announce plans to open at University Station. That's the $54 million mixed-use development on 15 acres near Xavier University. 3 doctors from the Queen City Physicians Medical Group in Hyde Park will practice at the Montgomery Road site, along with 29 doctors from the Bethesda family practice in Norwood. The health system, whose operations include Good Samaritan Hospital in Cincinnati and Bethesda North Hospital in Montgomery, is already the official health care provider for XU. The University of Cincinnati will demolish its campus services building at Reading Road and Lincoln Avenue. This is an 84-year-old building that was originally built as a Sears store. It's reportedly been deteriorating for quite a while now. The university had been using the building for some information technology services, storage, administrative functions, and other non-student related activities. Former Cincinnati Mayor Mark Mallory has a new job. He's joined Chester Group Incorporated. That's a Pennsylvania-based engineering services firm. He'll be the Senior Vice President and National Director of Community Economic Development for Chester. It provides energy, water, and wastewater solutions to public and industrial clients across the U.S. and internationally. We are told that Mark Mallory will continue to live in Cincinnati. Well, every once in a while, it's interesting to see what the average retail investor is thinking and doing. That would be you and me, the retail investor, a fancy term for us, those of us who buy stuff. While there are many surveys done on investor sentiment, there are relatively few on what the average investor is actually doing. So in this morning's U.S. Bank Economic 360, we take a peek at the tracks retail investors are leaving in the snow with Jim Russell, U.S. Bank's senior equity strategist. Good to see you, Jim.
Good morning.
We're coming out of a period where the average investor has sort of run away from risk. What does that mean to the markets? How does that work with the markets?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, we have come out of a period where the average investor has been risk averse, risk intolerant, and running away from risk a little bit. You know, the financial crisis, Brian, really put at risk governments, countries, individuals, consumers, a variety of ancillary impacts. So when risks rise, you can see that in the upper left-hand corner there, normally investors flow out of stocks into really 2 lower volatility categories, cash and bonds. Now, of course, what we're seeing more recently is that actually risks have actually decreased to a degree. And so what we see in that particular type of transition is a flow from cash and bonds back into stocks. And in fact, we're starting to see, evidence of that kind of flow taking place at the retail level.
I like the way you call this tracks in the snow. How is this investor activity actually measured, Jim?
Well, as you mentioned, Brian, there are all kinds of surveys that actually ask investors, what do you plan to do? Well, there are just a couple of surveys out there that actually track what investors actually do. And that is, are they buying stocks? Are they buying bonds? Are they doing other things? And so what we've done here is put together a graph that shows for mutual funds over the last, call it since 2008, so the last several years, what have investors actually done? You can see the red line on top where investors have actually bought a tremendous amount of bonds until just recently, and you see the inflection point in 2003. You can see that starting to tip over a little bit. Same thing for stocks, but almost opposite. And that is, since 2008, investors have flowed out of or sold stocks in the mutual fund complex, and actually until 2003, and we're starting to see a hook up. So actually, investors these days are starting to run back toward the stock market, maybe toward taking a little bit more risk as things stabilize.
But that's a pretty dramatic shift. What would you say is behind that?
Well, there are several things. Number one, we're starting to see clear evidence, and we got GDP numbers just last week, where the United States grew in 2013 at 2.7%, and we're looking for something in the 3% range for 2014. So it does appear that housing has stabilized a bit. It does appear that all kinds of economic metrics, employment, certainly the markets have stabilized a bit. Growth both in the United States and in Europe have stabilized a bit. So those factors combined together, frankly, take investors and perhaps ask them to maybe return to a more active and slightly higher risk profile of stocks, improving economic data. Also, the Fed does enter into that, is that they're going to be increasing interest rates probably in the 2015 period. Higher interest rates means lower bond prices. So again, investors from cash and bonds into stocks.
Interesting look at the tracks in the snow. Thank you, Jim.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate you and U.S. Bank. Still to come this morning on U.S. Bank Business Watch, it's Super Bowl Sunday, but some people are more focused on the arts. If you prefer the arts, February is your month, and you're going to want to stick around. 40 under 40 honorees. She is the Director of Talent Assessment and Measurement at Macy's. It's time for our Business Insight on U.S. Bank Business Watch. ArtWave's 2014 community campaign is now underway. ArtsWave provides support for more than 100 arts organizations in Greater Cincinnati. It is the first and largest United Arts Fund in the country. The fund drive runs through April 22nd. The goal this year is $12 million. For more on ArtsWave, the fund drive, and the upcoming sampler weekends, Business Courier publisher Jamie Smith is joined by Alicia Kittner, the Chief Operating Officer of ArtsWave. Jamie and Alicia.
Thanks, Paul. Alicia, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure.
As Paul just said, you guys are one of the largest arts organizations out there. You've traditionally had one of the most successful arts campaigns in the country. Obviously, the residents of Cincinnati very much support the arts.
They do. It's amazing. Our United Arts campaign, which is what we are, attracts more than 37,000 donors, and that does make it the largest fund of its kind in the country. So it's amazing, the generosity here.
Well, you're kicking it off, and I know Melanie with Procter & Gamble. Melanie Healy is going to be the chair.
She is our community-wide campaign chair, yes.
And she set some pretty lofty goals, I understand.
She has set a high bar at $12 million. That's $500,000 more than last year, which was up over the prior year. So we really feel some momentum behind us, but it's a big number.
And I think you've got some great initiatives out there, and you're really going to kind of go after the corporate world a little more than usual. Let's talk about that.
Well, We've always been great partners with the Cincinnati corporate community and have about 300 workplace giving campaigns for the arts and another couple hundred business contributors. So we feel a great partnership there. We want to broaden how we engage employees in the workplace this year, and Melanie has actually challenged companies to step up and conduct choir competitions internally, which is something that P&G and Cincinnati Children's have both done for the arts. But we're going to have a community-wide Cincy Sings sing-off in April at the Aronoff.
Well, that's great.
So
Well, the audience of the Business
involved.
Courier that came to the Book a List Gala last week got to see a little tasting of that with one of the Procter & Gamble choirs there.
Yes,
they were incredible.
Weren't they great?
They were incredible.
Yeah.
I'd be scared if I was going to compete right now.
I know. So they have a number of internal choirs that will be competing internally, and the winning team from P&G will advance to the citywide competition, and there will be other businesses and companies sending teams as well.
That's great. Talk a little bit about the sampler weekend. Let's talk about that. That's always a big hit.
Macy's Arts Sampler is 3 Saturdays of free arts programs all across the region. So this coming Saturday, February 8th is the first, and then there's March 15th and April 12th. We're having more than 140 different arts activities in 50 venues across the region. It's really a great way to introduce your family, your friends to the arts with a sampler of what's going on.
That's great. Well, how can citizens get involved? How can we engage them a little more?
Melanie has come up with another great idea, Toast to the Arts. For the first time, we're partnering with businesses and restaurants and bars and hotels across the region to feature red wine and a white wine at their menus, and $2 of each glass of these specially selected wines chosen by Cutting Edge Selections, a local distributor. $2 will come from each glass to the Arts Wave campaign.
Oh, that's awesome. Sounds like a lot of fun.
A lot of people as
good
well.
Good wine, good arts. You can't beat it. Well, there's some information on the screen now for viewers to see, but it's a great organization. We're so glad to be involved and run a campaign every year.
Thank you.
I look forward to a lot of the arts coming up this year.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
Brian, back to you.
All right, thanks for joining us this morning for U.S. Bank Business Watch. We're back next Sunday, each Sunday morning, 6:30 on Local 12, 10 a.m. on the CW. During the week for business news, visit the Business Courier online and sign up for our daily emails and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Our address, CincinnatiBusinessCourier.com. I am Brian Patrick, not Paul, Jamie. For all of us on U.S. Bank Business Watch, have a great Sunday and a good week.